Hello, everyone. My name is Daniel Wedman, and I'm in my fourth year of a degree in biological sciences at the University of Alberta. This is my presentation for my certificate in sustainability, and for my case, I looked at sustainable mining practices. I focused on peatland mining in the Hudson Bay Lowland region, mostly focusing on Northern Ontario, and determining whether our current mining practices are sustainable and whether we are able to expand on these or if our current mining practices are unsustainable and we should stop mining here altogether. So for starters, I would like to show a bit of the Hudson Bay Lowland area itself. This is one of the largest cold wetlands of the world, and it developed due to glaciation. There is a mild climate here with a low mean annual temperature somewhere around 3 degrees Celsius, and the mean precipitation is usually between 500 and 700 millimeters, depending on where in the region it is measured. Lots of sediments and silts were left behind by the deglaciation, and this provides good confining layers for the area. There's also a fair amount of carbonate-based bedrock. All of these factors combine to allow this area to form large amounts of wetlands and peatlands, with more than 90% of the Hudson Bay lowland area covered by these peatlands. This is approximately 300,000 square kilometers, which is a very significant amount of peatland. These peatlands are a significant sink of carbon for the world, holding in large amounts of carbon. But when these are disturbed, the carbon can be released as CO2 and methane. Within the Hudson Bay lowlands, there's a 5,000 square kilometer area in the far north of Ontario, which is known specifically as the Ring of Fire. And this is where many minerals of note have been discovered recently. Many resources such as nickel and copper can be found in this area in significant amounts. And the resources found in this area are used for a wide variety of things, including parts for electric vehicles and some other green energy components. For my presentation, I'm going to focus on chromite, as this has been one of the more recent discoveries. Chromite is used to produce chromium, and this is the only way to get this ore. With chromium is used for manufacturing of many metals and metal-based products, but most specifically, it is used for the manufacturing of stainless steel. As we know, many things are made of stainless steel, so it's obvious how important this material could be. It would make a lot of money for the area if we were to start harvesting it. The first amounts of chromite, which were found of a substantial quantity, were found within the Ring of Fire in 2008, and multiple projects have since been proposed to begin mining in this area. However, none have been completed or even started. The Ontario government has recently broached the subject of mining in these peatlands again very recently, looking at potentially putting projects in place. This here is just a map of the area, mainly focused on the Ring of Fire here. It shows all the mining claims of the Ring of Fire, but I'm going to specifically highlight this Victor Diamond mine right here, as I'll be talking about a case study on that mine later. It is very close to lots of the other mining claims of this area, and so it'll have a very similar climate and hydrology. The current mining practices of this area usually lean towards just doing open pit mines. That's likely what any mine for chromium would be. Open pit mines consist of large areas of the ground being excavated and left open and exposed to the elements. Lots of mines operate this way as it is the cheapest design and allows for large amounts of the ore to be mined. However, a study done by Rooney et al. In 2012 was completed in northern Alberta, and this showed that in areas of peatlands, irreversible destruction occurs when open pit mines are formed. Landscape changes, which are caused by these mines, disturb the peatlands and other wetland ecosystems, causing a release of large amounts of stored carbon. With the Hudson Bay lowland areas consisting of one of the largest peatlands of the world, disturbances here could have a devastating effect on the environment. This brings me to my main topic of the presentation. Is it worth it to continue mining these materials, and will it be sustainable? So to do this, I did a literature review on current mining practices and proposed plans within this area. I also looked at multiple case studies of other mines. This included mines which were built in peatlands, as well as specifically mines that were built in the Ring of Fire. I aimed to determine whether it was worth it from the standpoint of multiple stakeholders, as building of mines in this area would have a large effect on varying groups of people. By analyzing these, I was able to determine whether or not I believe that peatland mining in this area is worth it, and both some potential benefits and negatives to mines being here. So first, to look at some potential benefits, the main one here is money. It would be extremely good for the economy of Ontario specifically, as well as Canada, because Ontario is the fourth largest chromite reserve in the world. this vein in the Ring of Fire is massive. Currently, all of our chromite in Canada comes from outer sources, but this will allow Canada to have a supply from within the country itself. According to the Ontario Chamber of Commerce, the Ring of Fire has the potential to generate up to $9.4 billion in GDP within the first 10 years and over $25.5 billion over the next 32. Most of the benefits would, of course, be in the mining industry, but others, such as real estate, would also benefit quite significantly. Next, to look at some of the potential negatives of the area, the first one I want to look at is ecosystem sensitivity. So as we know, peatlands can be a very sensitive ecosystem, one which is extremely affected by changes such as global warming, or in this case, mining. Disturbance of the peatlands can cause a large release of carbon emissions into the atmosphere. To show this, I'm going to talk about a study done on the groundwater and hydrology of the area around the Victor Diamond Mine by Simon Gautry and Meg Foster-Wheeler. So the Victor Diamond Mine is an open pit mine, which is located in the James Bay Lowlands, which is very near to where the chromium mining would take place, about 150 kilometers away. The site is only accessible through a winter road and an airstrip, and to build the mine, it required dewatering of the surrounding wetlands. This study focuses on the effects on the peatlands and the peatland ponds of the area, and where they were observing for the shallow groundwater levels within these ponds. They measured over 11 years through air surveys, and they looked at about 30 ponds in the nearby area. These dried out. However, most of the ponds in the area remained filled. Satellite surveys were also used, and they found that there was a dewatering effect on the local peatlands. This effect was that the peatlands were more dried out than the ones located out of the area outside of the mine, but the effects were localized. Approximately 15 new sinkholes also formed in the area, likely due to the effect of the low pH water which was produced by the mine. This study found that the environmental effects on the area did lead to a significant change and drying of the surrounding local peatlands. Specifically looking at chromium mines, there were some other studies that focused on chromite mining, and I found that there would be a significant amount of acid drainage in chromium mines. The effects from this have the potential to last for centuries after the mining projects. So this would mean that the low pH water that was observed from the Victor Diamond Mine would be similar to this, so likely there would be sinkholes forming in this area as well. In 2013, the Cliffs Chromite project was undertaken, with the goal being to build a mine at the largest known vein of chromite in North America. So again, that was in the Ring of Fire, about 150 kilometers from the Victor Diamond Mine. So when we look at the climate and that sort of thing from that study, those parts of the environment would be very similar. However, this project was abandoned later on in 2013 as the company determined it was not financially viable for them. Even if the plan were to go ahead, there was a study done by Lakehead University, which found that the many impacts on the wildlife of the area, as well as the surrounding peatlands, would occur. And at that point, it is unknown how severe those effects would have been if this project were to continue. This here is a map of, again, the Ring of Fire here, and any of these red dots are kind of chromite deposits. So as you can see here, these are all in the vein. This red one here with the arrow to it is the Cliffs Chromite mine proposal. This is where they proposed that the mine was going to be in that study that we just looked at. Another potential issue with expanding industrially into this area is the amount of First Nations people who are present. Several First Nations have traditional territories within the Ring of Fire, with many of these currently only accessible through winter road or air travel. If development were to occur in this area, active consultations and sharing of the potential benefits would need to occur with the First Nation tribes of the area. This also requires them to agree with the proposed ideas and potential changes to the area which would occur. Since many of the tribes in this area, specifically the Matawa First Nations, tend to live off of the land, this would mean that they would have drastic changes in their way of life. Cooperation and unity from all parties involved would be necessary in order for any developments to be completed. So, my conclusion, is it worth it to do this peatland mining here? I do not think so. Based on the evidence that I found from other studies, the potential effects on the ecosystem are too great. Lots of money would be made, but it would be costly to build and develop infrastructure as well. This is seen in that Cliffs proposal, as the company did not have enough money to complete what was necessary for infrastructure. Really, it was too much of an investment for them. And they're a pretty big company. That kind of tells you how much it would cost to build this. I also don't know how much peatland would be disturbed by mining in this area. This could release mass amounts of carbon emissions into the atmosphere. And since this is one of the world's largest carbon sinks, this could be detrimental, not just for the climate of Canada itself and Canada's climate goals, but for the whole world. This could also have a major effect on the wildlife of the area, including threatened species like the woodland caribou who live here. This area will not be reclaimed into peatland, like lots of the proposals would say, as this takes a very long time, multiple centuries in many cases, to form. There's also the social aspect as well, and making sure that Aboriginal rights are maintained and their thoughts and opinions are taken into consideration has been a difficulty in the past for expansion into like the mining industry. So I just don't think it's worth it overall to continue mining here or to follow through on any of these proposed projects. Here I looked at a little bit more at regeneration of peatland just to kind of prove my point about how long it takes to, I guess, restore peatland itself. And in this case, a study was undertaken by Girard, Lavoie, and Thoreau on an ombotrophic peatland within Quebec, which was mined between 1942 and 1975. So over 34% of the initial peat was removed and much of the area was drained, similar to what would have to happen in order to build a mine in the Hudson Bay lowlands. The ditches which were dug for drainage, they still drain off a significant amount of precipitation even after being blocked off. Plant cover did have a significant amount of regeneration in this area, with many sphagnum colonies reestablishing themselves in areas where the water level remains just below the surface. However, it is a slow recovery and a significant amount of soil oxidation occurred. That's irreversible. It was determined that it is difficult to re-wet a peatland that has been dried due to changes caused by the initial drainage. While there is significant recovery of vegetation in this area, the sphagnum cover was determined to be unlikely to expand, as the drainage ditches were unable to be fully blocked and were still partially active, even when this study was done 40 years after this was supposedly blocked off. By mining the peatlands in the Ring of Fire, similar scenarios would develop, and peatland would not be regenerated in a short timeline, meaning the wetlands would lose their ability to act as a carbon sink. So, as we know, often the government won't necessarily listen to this. So if this were to go ahead anyways, as some projects would, more sustainable methods of mining would need to be determined and developed in order to have the least effect possible on the land. Currently, the mining practices are not sustainable for peatland. This includes building infrastructure which would have the least effect, whether this is only having winter roads or fly-in, fly-out areas. I do think in the future, there's a good chance that the government ends up approving a mining project for chromium in this area. However, right now, the cost is too high for most companies to perform this sustainably, and really, it's just impossible to perform sustainably with the current mining practices. The laws surrounding protection of wetlands are succeeding in protecting them currently, leading me to my conclusion that mining in the Ring of Fire is currently not feasible economically or environmentally. Thank you very much.